Max series of classes. In today's lesson, we will try and take a look at the most difficult aspect of the critical reading portion, that is the reading comprehension, not in terms of singular passages, but in terms of dual passages. Now, most of us who have taken the SAT once or are planning to take the SATs have taken the PSATs or have taken certain SAT mocks. We know that the most difficult part always is the dual passages. Now, as you know, the composition is you will get one set of dual passages with the passages that are very short. That means anywhere between 10 and 12 lines per passage. And you will get one set of dual passages which is very long, which can be anywhere from 60 lines to 80 lines per passage. Now, what is the difficulty, you might say? Now, if it was an individual passage, then the difficulty would not be any difficulty which is different from the individual passages that you normally do on the critical reading. But the difficulty is not so much in the contents of the passage, but in our trying to correlate the information that is given in both the passages. Now, more often than not, the approach to these passages should depend on what kind of questions are given. Now, there you would have some questions based on passage 1. You would have some questions based only on passage 2. You would have a few questions that are based both on passage 1 and passage 2. You would have a few questions wherein they give you a line reference in a certain passage. Say they give you line 5 in passage 1 and they ask you how this line would be interpreted by the author of passage 2. Now, this means that these two passages, both passage 1 and passage 2, are passages which deal with the same material, or rather the same topic, but they would be written by two different authors. Now, because they're written by two different authors, perspectives would be different. Now, when we say that the perspectives are different, it's not necessarily that the perspectives would be diametrically opposed to each other. It is not that the perspective would be totally antagonistic towards each other. It could be very well that the perspective is similar to each other, or it could be that there are some points wherein both the authors agree with, and there could be some points where both the authors differ in their opinion. Or there might be passages wherein passage 1 is in totally a positive tone and passage 2 on the same topic would be in a totally negative tone. Then again, like I said, it depends on the perspective of the author. So let the contents of the passage not put you off when you are dealing with this type of question. Now, what I personally find very easy to do is, when you look at the dual passages, look at questions individually. In the sense, what do I mean when I say look at questions individually? Take a look at questions that deal with only passage 1. Take a look at questions that deal with only passage 2. So in your order of doing these questions, finish off these individual passage-based questions or these questions that are based on one passage only, and then come to tackle the questions which are based on your understanding of the connection between both these passages. In that way, what happens is you not only get a perspective of the both the author's ideas, and you will also get a perspective on what is actually being tested. You would also understand whether the perspectives of the authors are similar, whether they are dissimilar, whether they are diametrically opposite, or whether they agree in some points and they disagree in a few other points. Now, let's take a very, very short passage. I have further condensed it. What I have done is I have taken the first sentence and the last sentence here. I have also taken the first sentence and the last sentence of passage 2 also. Now, here, to explain this type of question, I have specifically taken a very condensed version. I'll give you a reason why. The condensed version is wherever you see these elliptical sentences, the reason is that when examples, counter examples and all these are given, they are only to explain a certain point. Now the objective here is to see not the entire passage and see whether we understand the passage or not. That we will leave it to the passage when we are doing the practice sessions. But our understanding, or rather our focus here, is to see whether we can interpret individual questions from a particular passage. Now before we go to that, let's take a look at how these two passages are, passage 1, passage 2. Like I have told you, both passages will talk about the same topic with perhaps the same perspective or perhaps a different perspective. Now take a look at this. We have 5 senses in which we glory, senses that constitute the sensible world to us, but senses which are unrecognized and unlauded. Perhaps in space age, we will truly appreciate our senses. In normal situations, for a normal man, these simply do not exist. That means these senses do not exist. Okay, what is this entire thing talking about? We are talking about senses. In what context are we talking about senses? We are talking about the 5 senses not being recognized. In what sense are they not being recognized? They are not being recognized because in normal situations, for a normal man, these senses do not exist. That means we take these senses that we have so much for granted. It is next to not being there at all. So he says, unless we create a condition wherein, perhaps there is something like gravity missing or something, only then perhaps we will be able to truly appreciate our senses, because what you have now in normal situations, we take it for granted, so we don't appreciate our senses. Now compare this with the next passage. In passage 2, what are we talking about? We are saying a person can know something and apply that knowledge, but also can know something and not apply that knowledge. In other words, we can know that we have senses, but maybe we don't apply our knowledge of our senses, but we do not know. There is no mention of senses here. But anyway, take a look at the next one. It says, in fact, in one sense, he has knowledge, and in another, he does not, as in sleep or madness or intoxication. That means he has, in one sense of the word, he has what we call as some knowledge, but that knowledge is not always used. When is the knowledge not being used? The knowledge is not used when a person is asleep, when a person is mad, insane, or when a person is drunk or intoxicated by any other means. So what is the connect between these two sentences? Both these authors are talking about knowledge. In this particular context, the author is talking about our knowledge of our senses and the fact that we do nothing about the knowledge that we have about our senses because we simply take them for granted. In the second passage, what is he saying? He says we have knowledge, whether it is of senses or of anything else, we have knowledge, but we choose not to apply that knowledge. So in a way, they are perhaps similar in that sense, in the fact that we have knowledge, but we do not use that knowledge in its entirety. Okay, so at this point of time, let's assume that this is what both the passages are talking about. Now the first question that I have taken here is to highlight the fact that you should do the individual passage based questions first. That means if you take a look at this question, it says the last sentence in passage 1 suggests that means this particular question or the interpretation or the answer for this particular question has to be derived from our interpretation of passage 1 only. This has nothing to do what we have understood of passage 2, what connection we make between passage 1 and passage 2, nothing of the sort, only passage 1. So now what do? We establish the context and we interpret the last sentence of passage 1. Now what does the last sentence of passage 1 say? It says in normal situations, they simply do not exist. What does the they refer to? Obviously, since the context of the sentence or the context of the passage is about senses, the 5 senses, the they perhaps refers to those senses. In normal situations, for us, these senses do not exist. They are non-existent. So this is the meaning of the last sentence. This is direct, no difficult words as such. except for our interpretation of what the they could mean. Now take a look at the answers. Modern discoveries hinder the understanding of bodily senses. What is right about this particular answer option? Bodily senses. Something that deals with the 5 senses that we have but which are not recognized. Here we are saying they do not exist. So here they have hindered our understanding. What is the meaning of hinder? The meaning of hinder is to obstruct. So are we saying that something is obstructed in the last sentence, or are we saying that it simply does not exist? We are saying that it simply does not exist. It's not there at all. Whereas here it says it has hindered. Hindered is obstructed. If it is obstructed, that means there is some chance of something being visible at a later point of time. So here, this part, hindered bodily senses, is irrelevant. Moreover, it says modern discoveries. What is the context of modern discoveries here? The context of modern discoveries here is where he's talking about space age. Yeah, so space age is modern discovery, no doubt about that. But what is the last sentence talking about? Is the last sentence talking about space age? So if the last sentence is not talking about space age, how is modern discoveries relevant here? Get the point? So modern discoveries is not at all relevant, because what are we interpreting? We are interpreting only the last sentence. What does the last sentence say? It says something is not there. Not there in the context of what? In the context of the main idea. What is the main idea? Main idea is that we are not aware of our senses. So therefore modern discoveries has no role to play here. Take the next answer. Option B. It says the last sentence of passage 1 suggests that biological knowledge has grown rapidly in recent time. Okay, or maybe I'll rephrase it. I will say knowledge of biology. Somehow biological knowledge sounds incorrect. Knowledge of biology has grown rapidly in recent times. Very well. If you talk about senses, then you can say, okay, it's related to us humans, and therefore it is in some sense biology. Yes, you are on the mark, but it has grown rapidly in recent times. How do we know whether it has grown at all? Okay, space age is there, so we know it has grown. But how do you know it has grown rapidly in recent times? We do not know whether it has grown rapidly or whether our knowledge of biology has grown over aeons of time, whether it has been there from rock ages. It is not about our knowledge. It is about what is given here. Can we infer that it has grown in recent times? In recent times, we do not know if it has grown or not. Moreover, it is not our focus of our sentence here, because here we are talking about normal man in normal situations and what does not exist. So this positivity of the answer is something that can be eliminated. It cannot be considered at all, because we do not, it simply does not exist. That's the focus of our sentence. We must work hard to maintain pace with technology. Brilliant answer. It uses space age, so therefore technology. We can also push it with, further by saying maintain pace with technological advances or whatever. Yeah, good. Maybe technology, space age and technology, that's fine. But have you seen how these 3 answers are focused on other parts of the passage and not necessarily the line in question? So the line in question, something does not exist. So we must work hard, we may not work hard, whatever, it could be relevant, could not be relevant, but in this particular context of what is given to us, it's totally illogical. We must work hard, nothing of that sort here. Remember, we are interpreting only this particular line. So this also can be eliminated. Recent studies of senses have been misleading. Does not exist is negative. Misleading is also negative. Misleading in the sense it is pointing us at a totally different direction. Do we want to say that? No, we do not want to say that it is pointing us at a totally different, in a totally different direction. We don't want to say that. So therefore it does not exist. That's what we want to say. Take a look at option E. So this is also ruled out. most people do not appreciate the function of certain physical senses. Okay, most people do not appreciate the function of certain physical senses. Do not appreciate. What is the meaning of do not appreciate? In normal situations, that is most people, for normal people, they simply do not exist. Do not exist, do not appreciate. That means if for a normal man, these senses are like non-existent. That means even if they are there, they are never taken as important. Therefore, it says they simply do not exist. So therefore, they do not appreciate the function of physical senses, which totally complements the fact that the entire passage is talking about the 5 senses. Now, when you read through the passage, you might come across the answer that we are talking about 5 senses. So therefore, this is the only answer which is talking about senses. Yes, that's also a way of doing it. But this way, there is no room for any kind of doubt. Very clearly, the answer is logically analyzed and you can come up with just one answer. So on the face of it, it appears to be a lengthy question with lengthy answer options, but it is in reality, it's a very, very simple question which is not different at all from our interpretation of word meanings or phrases or sentences in the context of the sentence, in the context of the passage. So option A also we have eliminated. So by logical analysis and by systematic elimination, we come to the answer E, which is an interpretation or a paraphrasing of the last sentence of passage 1. So it doesn't matter if this question is derived from the dual passages. You see, we didn't have to touch on passage 2 at all for handling this type of question. So it is always advisable to tackle individual questions of the dual passages or questions pertaining to individual passages in a dual passage, finish them off first and then go for the combination questions. Alright, so as part of our next question, we will take a question based on passage 2.